So welcome to another Tokyo Revengers video guys. And yeah, chapter 273 got released. At last it connected the major chapters, now the whole Tokyo Revengers plot is making a lot more sense. In the previous chapter, we saw Shinichiro could successfully go back in time and save his little brother. He was emotional after seeing Mikey is alive in front of his eyes on the date of Mikey's accident in the original timeline. Shinichiro then realized he could shift timelines, also time travel back after killing the old man and jumping off the bridge himself. We saw for the first time Mikey's dark impulse and how remorseful he was after he realized his mistake. Then there was the Sanzu being Shinichiro's trigger part, about which we discussed it in so many videos. With the help of Sanzu, Shinichiro again time traveled to 2003 of a different timeline. A timeline where Mikey is still alive and not in his vegetative state like in the original timeline that we saw in the beginning of this arc. Now let's dive into the chapter. As in this chapter, all our questions were answered. But before we discuss more about it, as usual guys, I would kindly appreciate it if you can drop a like on the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Let's go into the video now. The chapter begins with Mikey coming to Shinichiro to repair his bike. We all recollect that scene from episode 16 from the anime where some random goons come up to beat the shit out of that bike and Baji protects it with all he got. He was even beaten for that. Then Mikey comes to the scene and he himself first destroys his bike and then fights them all. I'm in awe and still thinking about how drastic the changes are in between the original timeline and this timeline. One where Mikey is in vegetative state and the other where he's the invincible Mikey. As usual, Shinichiro couldn't believe his eyes as he was overwhelmed seeing Mikey in front of his eyes as he still couldn't overcome the trauma of losing him. Mikey tells Shinichiro to repair his broken bike and Shinichiro asks his age. He again emotionally breaks down in front of Mikey as he sees his brother in a perfectly healthy state. He's happy seeing that he's all grown up. Shinichiro keeps saying, "I changed destiny by leaping through time." It's ironic as we all know what Shinichiro's true destiny is in this timeline. The curse by the old man to Shinichiro involves someone dying, and in my opinion, no one can escape his fate how much ever we try. Anyway, coming to the next scene, we see Sanzu talking to Shinichiro in a restaurant. Sanzu wanted to talk to him as he thinks that he's turning crazy. Sanzu tells him that in his head he has two different memories. He says he attended Shinichiro's funeral 2 days back as he jumped off into the river. And Mikey was dead as well. According to his memories, Mikey should have died by now. But now Mikey has formed his own gang. So many of you guys asked if Mikey and Sanzu are really childhood friends, then why didn't he invite Sanzu to join Toman? Some people think it's because after Mikey's mother dies, he said he hates weak people and Mikey considered as a Sanzu weak person. So he didn't want him in his gang. Others have this theory that Sanzu was in prison as he kept slashing whoever talks bad about Mikey with his katana. And thus, due to his unavailability during the formation of the gang, Sanzu couldn't join Toman. But now, we know the actual reason could be that Sanzu was mentally very disturbed during that time because of the sudden shifts in timelines. To be honest, even I'm a bit messed up after so much happened and so many timelines changed. Sanzu says he's shocked as Shinichiro is supposed to become a nurse and take care of Mikey. But now he sees Shinichiro works at a bike shop. He seemed extremely perplexed and confused as he couldn't understand what was going on. New memories of the past appeared to him, even though he was in the present timeline. And that was what drove him mad. Now guys, it's expected that Sanzu will retain a few memories from the past timelines as he was Shinichiro's trigger. Both of them deeply cared for Mikey and prioritized his happiness over their own. Both were desperately trying to save Mikey and had the same intentions, which made him the trigger. Now, if you guys remember in episode 13, a similar thing happened to Naoto as well when Takemichi changed something back in the past. In Hina's funeral, after seeing Takemichi's tears, Naoto broke down and started crying. He said, "Just why? I thought everything went well." This tells us that Naruto felt the changes and he was well aware of the changes that had taken place. He too must have two memories. So I believe that not only the time leaper but also his trigger retains the memories of both the timelines that are leapt. Now, after seeing Sanzu in such a sorry state, Shinichiro reveals that he actually time leapt in order to save Mikey from dying. He explained to him everything related to time leap and even told him his secret about killing the old man in order to get the powers. Sanzu looks a bit relieved after hearing all of this and promises Shinichiro he'll never tell anyone about this little secret of theirs, and even if he said, no one would ever believe this. Now comes the part we anticipated the most. Shinichiro is seen here walking, and he has a satisfactory smile on his face. He tells himself that he doesn't need the time-traveling powers anymore. Shinichiro's only goal was to protect and save Mikey. And now that Mikey is saved from that accident, he doesn't need to go back in time anymore. Just then he sees a ruckus happening between a bunch of school kids. A guy who calls himself a hero protests as few middle schoolers ganged up on a lone girl. The so-called hero here is none other than Takemichi. So yeah, Shinichiro did meet Takemichi in the past, where they didn't know each other. We saw this scene from 3 points of view, first from Hina, then Kasaki, and now from Shinichiro. But in Hina and Kasaki's story, we didn't see Shinichiro anywhere in the scene. But in this chapter, we see the whole thing from Shinichiro's eyes, just as we saw in the Mikey's Dark Impulse and Sanzu's Scars incident. I think Ken Wakui-sensei didn't show him in the scenes before. Because then everyone would have predicted that Shinichiro is a time leaper. Takemichi was trembling in fear, but still, as we know his character, he still stood up strong and showed immense confidence. Takemichi from a very young age protects Hina, maybe that's why he could time travel back, as his feelings to save her were extremely evident. But as usual, since it was a 3-on-1, Takemichi was defeated by those middle schoolers as they three started to hit him at once. Even though he was getting brutally kicked by the seniors, he kept his fighting spirits high and asked them for a fair fight. Here, Shinichiro steps in to stop the fight. When those bullies come after Shinichiro, he just punches a light post. And to their shock they see, the post is broken with his one single punch. We were told Shinichiro was weak, but maybe after Mikey's death, it changed him from within. He became a beast. Those kids' eyes were bawled out after seeing so much strength. They apologized and ran away. He comes to Takemichi and asks if he's okay, just to see him crying. Takemichi says, "How can I be strong? I want to be like you, I want to be a real hero." From the time the manga started, so many people like Mikey, Baji and Inupi compared Takemichi with Shinichiro and said they're almost similar. Now, everything is starting to make sense. Everything is falling back to its place. In chapter 182, we see Kasaki's point of view, and there Takemichi says he wants to become the #1 delinquent in Japan. Maybe this is after he met Shinichiro, and then he wanted to become someone like him. And thus we see so many parallels drawn between him and Shinichiro. Shinichiro is taken aback after hearing Takemichi thinks him as a hero, as he had committed a great crime of murder in his past timeline. He reassures Takemichi that one day he will definitely be strong. And he looks at his hands and gets the flashback of the old man. He happily passed on his time-traveling powers to Takemichi. He says, if there's somebody that you need to protect, when all else fails, you can use this power. Shinichiro had gone through a lot of suffering in the original timeline and after Mikey's accident. He tried everything to bring him back to his normal state, but could not. So he time-traveled back and saved his brother. Takemichi was confused, knowing nothing about what Shinichiro was talking about. Meanwhile, Shinichiro remembered that even though the old man got his powers by killing someone in front of him, but he had mentioned this too, that he could transfer the time-traveling power if Shinichiro asked it from him. Shinichiro then regrets, thinking he should have simply asked instead of killing the old man. But at that time, Shinichiro was really on the edge and was so desperate that he didn't think twice before hitting his head with the iron rod. Shinichiro leaves, telling Takemichi that he's sure Takemichi can handle this power well. Now, the manga again comes back to the final battle in the current timeline. where Mikey is facing Takemichi. Wakasa says that Shinichiro had only told him this much, that he saved an unknown boy with the power of time. Mikey then says with a sad face that it is all cause and effect. As I've already mentioned in my previous videos, the characters have to face the consequences of their actions. And I think this will be the truth behind Mikey's dark impulse. Maybe the next chapter will focus on how Mikey got his dark impulse. And more about the sin and punishment theory. Takemichi is stunned after hearing this, it's a huge shock for him. He realized that Mikey's brother was the one who gave him the power. We were assuming that his brother was the one who pushed him. But it's actually the opposite, his brother protected him. Takemichi, Hina, and Kasaki had met Shinichiro in the past. And I think Takemichi didn't only meet him once, but might have met him again. Just like in Tenjiku arc, he doesn't remember anything from his past. In this arc too, he's unaware of what happened to him in the past. Maybe the next chapter will focus on how Shinichiro died, as he will die after 13 days in the bike shop. When Baji and Kazutora will break into the shop to buy Mikey a new bike. The reason why Kazutora did not get the time leap power, even after killing Shinichiro, is because Shinichiro thought the power was of no use to him anymore, and thus he passed it to Takemichi. So from that time onwards, Shinichiro was no longer a time leaper, it was Takemichi. He became a time leaper without his knowledge. That's why Kazutora is not a time leaper in any way. I had already made a video about this, if you are still confused, you can watch it. Many of you guys were asking, who did Takemichi had to kill to get his time leap powers, but now we're clear that time leap doesn't only work by killing the time leaper of that timeline, but also by transferring the power to someone by one's own will. If you guys have any theories about chapter 273, let's discuss it down below. It's a great pleasure to read all the comments and make videos on it. So anyway, if you guys like this video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And good luck to all.